Hello everyone, Fred here. In this installment of TPP Dynamite, I'm going to be, you guessed it, pitching a better Blade movie than the one Disney has planned. Assuming Disney even does make that Blade movie, given how all the writers and directors keep leaving, how the movie has been in limbo for 5 years, and how the star of the movie is one hair's breadth from leaving too. First things first though, if you haven't already, let me encourage you to subscribe to my channel. I post film, book, and TV series reviews. I do opinion pieces on entertainment, news, and affairs. I'm also an author of adult and young adult mystery novels. I have 3 books out right now. There are links to them in my video description below, and I encourage you to check those out also. With that in mind, and without further ado, I'm going to just jump right into it. So just a little disclaimer up front. I'm not a Blade fanboy. I've never read even one of his comic books, and my only real exposure to him was watching his terrific run in Spider-Man the Animated Series. I did not make this video to defend the honor of the Blade character, given the disheartening plans that insiders have confirmed Disney has for him, or to express fan outrage over all that. My main reason for making this video was a cathartic release for my own growing frustration with Disney and how far that company has fallen regarding Marvel content since Avengers Endgame. Because it really has been frustrating for me as a general Marvel fan to see how quickly Disney has made the transition from a studio that couldn't stop winning with the MCU for 10 years because it understood that its assignment was to entertain audiences with cool and thought-provoking stories, to a studio that can't stop losing because it now believes that its assignment is to preach to audiences with uninspired stories told to check boxes and please social media influencers. The last straw was seeing how badly Disney has fumbled the ball with the Blade movie, despite how easy it should be to make a decent Blade movie. Seriously, it's been 5 years since a rebooted Blade movie was announced, with Mahershala Ali of all people attached to the title role, and the biggest movie studio in the world hasn't even figured out a script yet. Anyway, I'm not going to stray too far into the weeds here. I'm not pitching a full script or even an outline for a rebooted Blade movie, just an idea, the steps to making a Blade movie that would be better than the one Disney is tossing around right now. A Blade reboot that would be the first in a franchise that would be a hit with fans and critics, as well as a commercial success in theaters, because those are the mission parameters when it comes to making movies, despite popular opinion by Disney and other companies in Hollywood now. So here it is. The first and most fundamental step to doing a better Blade movie is to, wait for it, do a Blade movie. That should be obvious. Nevertheless, Disney, according to most sources, plans to make its Blade movie more about Blade's daughter than Blade himself, honoring a storyline from a very recent and not very beloved run of comics. Again, I'm not trying to get into the weeds, so I won't discuss the many reasons for why that's a bad idea, but let me just say this. When you've got a famous, talented, 2-time Oscar winner playing the title role in a movie about a comic book character who has enjoyed decades of fan love, it behooves you to make the movie more so about that character than about a D-list newbie comic book character who has none of the title character's staying power and who likely won't be portrayed by an actress with even half the talent or likability of the title character's actor. Besides which, it rarely ever works when you start a superhero movie franchise by tying down the main character with kids and the range of annoying and predictable tropes that tend to accompany them. Let us get to know Blade as a character first, over maybe 3 or 4 movies, then start complicating his world with plot devices like long-term love interests or children once the audience has a firm grip on Blade as a character. The goal of a Blade reboot is to build a franchise from the ground up, build audience investment, and the best way to do that is by making the first movie in the rebooted Blade franchise a Blade movie. It's almost crazy that I even have to say this as part of the pitch. Anyway, step 2, keep it simple. Keep it simple. This is the first movie in a rebooted Blade franchise. The goal is to cultivate love for the Blade character, and the best way to do that is to keep the story simple, enjoyable, and easy to follow. Blade is a half vampire who hunts other vampires. It's hard to mess that one up. It's hard to not make an entertaining story with that. For example, here's my idea for a Blade movie that I just thought of a few seconds ago. Blade is investigating strange vampire murders in London, England, his hometown, and stumbles upon a vampire boss's conspiracy to control the city by turning its entire population into vampires. It took me literally a minute to think of that, and it would work well as the plot of a first Blade movie, and it just goes to show you how easy this can be. Just tell the kind of basic story that introduces the audience to Blade, his world, and his supporting characters without overwhelming the audience. I would not make this an origin movie just because of how predictable those have gotten, but I would probably allude to Blade's origin in this movie and tease it out for exploration in future sequels. Step 3. This really does fall under the category of keeping things simple, but for Pete's sake, do not make this movie meticulously connected to the rest of the MCU. I once heard a rumor that while Disney was still releasing streaming shows on Netflix, there were potential plans for a Blade series that would be set in the same gritty and grounded arena as Daredevil, aka Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, The Punisher, and The Defenders. And I really do think that implementing a tweaked version of that plan would be the best way to approach the Blade reboot movie. All those Netflix shows, except for maybe Iron Fist and The Defenders, were programs that could be enjoyed as great entertainment without the context of the larger MCU. They made references to events that occurred in MCU movies, but they only ever teased a connection to the rest of the MCU. They did not painstakingly shove it into every aspect of the story. Daredevil was a brutal crime drama about one guy fighting the good fight in one neighborhood, and that show sang. Same with Luke Cage. Jessica Jones was a story about one woman's fight to reclaim her agency after a nightmarish assault on her mind and body, and it sang too. Every MCU project doesn't need to be meticulously connected to all the others to work, and Blade is one project that shouldn't be. For one thing, trying to tie Blade into about 16 years of past MCU content at this point is just going to make fans more confused and alienated than they should be when you're trying to get them to buy into the first movie of a new franchise. For another thing, Blade's story just isn't going to work in the general MCU. The violent, dark, and occult-heavy nature of most Blade stories just won't vibe with the generally kid-friendly, humor-heavy nature of almost every other MCU movie. I know that there was that tease in Eternals about Blade, but that could and should just be retconned out or explained away by other means. Much like The Punisher, Blade does not need to play well with everyone else. And that ties into step 4. This movie needs to be R-rated, point blank, period. This is a story about a man who hunts and slaughters vampires who themselves slaughter and turn unsuspecting humans. This is a horror movie. It's going to be scary, it's going to be bloody, there's going to be very little joking, very few happy endings, very few cuts away from the violence. That's the only way to do a proper Blade movie, and that's actually yet another reason to keep it largely disconnected from the rest of the MCU. Step 5. Despite how it goes against everything that Disney Marvel represents, this movie needs to be kept at a low budget. Yes, the MCU is a mega franchise unto itself. Yes, most MCU movies make at least $300 million at the box office, but this Blade movie is the first in its own niche sub-franchise, which means that building a paying audience around it might take some time, and expectations need to be set accordingly. Besides that, R-rated movies, even R-rated superhero movies, don't tend to make very much money. And I know you're thinking right now of refuting what I just said by citing Joker or the Deadpool movies, but if you remember, the first Deadpool was made very cheaply by movie standards for about $58 million, and it wasn't until that movie became a massive hit and an unexpected box office success that the budgets for future Deadpool movies started to increase. Joker was made even cheaper for about $55 million, and its runaway success was equally unexpected. And there's a good lesson to be learned there. I would not make this Blade movie for any more than $60 million. Solid vampire movies have been made for much less, and that should be more than enough, given that my proposed Blade movie is a simple introduction to Blade and his corner of the MCU. He doesn't need to be destroying spaceships or going to other planets or doing things that require a budget like that of an Avengers movie. Step 6, and this may be the most important one of them all. Hire a quality writer and director who can stand with self-respect next to Mahershala Ali and give those people space to do their work. Optimistically, the writer and director should have written or directed quality award-winning movies or series in Blade's general genre before they're hired to direct and write for Blade. Optimistically, there should be just one writer or at most two who get along very well and who are frequent collaborators. Just like too many cooks spoil the kitchen, too many writers ruin the script. I won't go down the rabbit trail of naming people who could pull it off, but suffice it to say that they are out there and I would find and hire them if I were making this movie. Optimistically, the writer and director should have a very deep understanding of the Blade comics or be willing to do the research to get it. I could, but will not, do an entire sub video right now about the many reasons why this movie will get best results if it is made to entertain fans, and a second sub video about why faithfully adapting the Blade source material is the best way to entertain fans. Anyway, optimistically, the writer and director should be given near total creative control over this movie. If I were in Disney's shoes, I would vet those people very well to screen out any issues that might otherwise arise down the line. But once I hired them, I would trust them to tell the best Blade story that they could. That means limited studio interference, limited interference by sensitivity readers or other pencil pushers. Once again, the goal is to entertain audiences, not sabotage the Blade movie before it even releases in a bid to make sure that it doesn't challenge or offend. A movie is art. Art is always inherently challenging or offensive on some level to someone. So trying to eliminate that aspect of art is just going to hamper the experience for the audience. Really, in an ideal world, I think that just about the only studio interference regarding the Blade movie should be interference in the interest of ensuring that the movie doesn't actually nakedly contradict already established aspects of the MCU. And there you have it, the pitch for a better Blade movie than Disney will likely ever make, assuming that the Blade movie that Disney has been stalling for about 5 years now actually does come out and start a franchise. I'm well aware that Disney will likely never listen to my advice, but it's cathartic for me to offer it, and it's fun for me to imagine a world in which my pitch might actually be the skeleton for a Blade movie that actually does see the light of day, no vampire puns intended. So I feel like I've accomplished something anyway. At any rate, that's just my opinion. Let me know yours. How do you think Disney should handle Blade? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Do you think Disney is already doing a perfect job and that nothing needs to change about its approach? Or are your feelings more complex? Sound off in the comments below, but if you do disagree, I do ask that you disagree agreeably. We're all just talking here and there's no need to be cruel. Meanwhile, if you liked this video and made it this far, don't forget to leave a like, click subscribe, ring that bell, and hey, follow me on social media as well. So long.